I call this court into session. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are still charged with considering the testimony of our ongoing witnesses to ascertain the validity of the original trial of Jesus. Did Jesus receive fair due process? Was the verdict just? Last week we heard the account of Judas Iscariot, Jesus' betrayer. Today we call Annas to the stand. Place your hand on the Bible and repeat after me. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
Be seated. So tell us who you are and why you are part of these proceedings.
My name is Annas, and I am the deposed high priest in Jerusalem. I came into office about 7 BC, to use your dating system. The Roman Emperor Augustus Caesar appointed Cyrenius as governor of Syria, and Cyrenius placed me in office as high priest. This was the same Cyrenius that called for the census when this upstart Jesus was born.
So I'm confused here. You are no longer the high priest. Why are you part of this story?
It wasn't just Governor Cyrenius' support I enjoyed. The Hebrew people in Judea liked me as well. I was their high priest, even though I had been removed from my position.
Well, why were you removed?
Well, the position of high priest is really a political appointment. I made a huge mistake and paid a big price for it. I acted independently of Rome. You see, the more powerful Rome got, the more power they took away from religious leaders. They no longer allowed us Jewish leaders to execute lawbreakers. Only the Romans could do that now. But I took the law into my own hands and executed a criminal. Another governor, Valerius Gratus, who had been appointed by Tiberius Caesar, had me deposed.
Caiaphas is now high priest. How did that happen?
Well, after I was taken out of office, there was a parade of high priests who each lasted only a year or so. 4 of my sons served as high priest before my son-in-law Caiaphas took office. With this revolving door of religious leaders, I had the advantage of age, experience, and respect. The people still considered me the real high priest.
So the royal guard brought Jesus to you.
Yes, I suppose that since I had a history of acting outside of Roman law by executing criminals, they thought that I might take the initiative with Jesus and go ahead and crucify him. Well, I was known as a maverick, and if I heard the case, I might order him to be killed on the spot. The Sanhedrin was the Jewish ruling council, and they agreed that Caiaphas, that Jesus needed to die. He was stirring up too much trouble, and Jesus only had bad things to say about us religious leaders. He even called us whitewashed tombs, indicating we were spiritually corrupt. How dare he? We have been the esteemed line of religious leaders for centuries. Jesus was a hick from backwater Galilee.
So you didn't pass him on to Caiaphas because you thought he was innocent.
I didn't live to be an old man by being a fool. I wasn't really surprised when I was awakened in my palace early that Friday morning. After all, I was one of the chief priests who met with Judas when he agreed to betray Jesus. It was just that I didn't expect Jesus to be turned over to us quite so soon. Our plan was to arrest and have Jesus tried and killed after the Passover celebration. But Judas was still angry over the insult he'd gotten from Jesus, and his blood was boiling. So, once he got the 30 pieces of silver and the deal was made, Judas moved quickly. Apparently, the guard expected me to do their dirty work. Frankly, in Jesus' trial before me, there wasn't much evidence of wrongdoing, and no witnesses came forward. I was left to question the accused myself. Who are your disciples, Jesus? Why do you want to start a rebellion and turn the Romans against us? Well, Jesus had little to say, but what he did say made me look foolish. Me, a man of stature. I have taught openly and not in secret. Why ask me? Ask those who heard me. They know what I said.
So why didn't you shut the whole proceeding down right there? Why was Jesus subjected to further trial?
His teaching was dangerous. He claimed to be the Son of God. The people welcomed him as a king. Do you think Rome was going to tolerate that?
Why do you think Jesus was so popular?
He said what the people wanted to hear. Hope for the suffering and love, always love, even for one's enemies. He talked about God's special care for the hungry and the needy. He performed miracles. Oh, and the clincher was this final miracle, raising that man Lazarus from the dead 4 days after he died.
What was so dangerous about that? It doesn't sound like Jesus was going to war.
The status and wealth of my family, the whole priesthood, Judea's relationship with Rome, everything was at stake. Can you imagine a world without Jerusalem at its center? A world without the great Jewish temple? A world without priests that have the common people access, that give the common people access to God? It's unthinkable. I couldn't just let Jesus go, nor could I just kill him. Caiaphas was on much better terms with Rome, so I sent him bound to Caiaphas. The situation escalated, and Jesus ended up in front of Pilate, the Roman governor. Now, Pilate eventually sentenced Jesus to death. The whole matter of this troublemaker should have ended with his death. Things should have returned to normal. I would continue as the respected high priest emeritus, and Caiaphas as my front man. Pilate would keep the people in Rome's stranglehold with the taxes flowing in.
Well, that's not the way things went, though, was it?
No. Just a few days after his crucifixion, rumors started to circulate that Jesus had risen from the dead. Preposterous. We tried to squelch this nonsense, but it only got worse. He was supposedly sighted around the area, walking along, having conversations, sharing food and drink. He didn't go away, and neither did his followers. They started converting people to faith in Jesus as the Messiah, saying that his death brought pardon in sin. They were baptizing hundreds, even thousands of people. The temple that I and my family had controlled, managed, and profited from was being overrun with Christians. Jesus' disciples stood up and proclaimed faith in Jesus despite everything we were trying to do to stop them. We even had Jesus' followers, James and Stephen, killed, but the cat was out of the bag, and there was no use trying to put it back in.
So you see this movement of Christianity as unstoppable?
Well, it's been a long time now since these things happened, nearly 2,000 years. As long as the followers of Jesus keep sharing his story, I suppose the movement will continue. But I'm hoping that this farce about Jesus being the Messiah will die out, that something will happen to silence testimony about Jesus. Then my efforts won't have been in vain.
Well, Annas, what would you say to this jury?
Consider the bigger picture. Sure, the testimony against Jesus was shaky, but we were under Roman rule. Failure to convict and execute Jesus would have resulted in our further oppression. We had no choice.
Well, jury, you've heard the testimony of Annas. You must decide whether Annas was acting out of self-interest or whether his motives were just. Were the religious leaders right in their decision that Jesus needed to die? Was there more than meets the eye to this scenario? Annas, you are excused from the witness stand. I take this court into recess. Our next witness is the high priest when Jesus came up for trial, Caiaphas. Until then, jury, please consider the testimony that you are hearing. Consider Jesus' innocence or guilt.